Lone rancher for years, until Apache widow came said, "My child needs a father." Best Wild West stories. For nearly a decade, the only voices on Jacob Thorne's ranch were the wind scraping along the desert flats and the low groans of cattle settling at dusk. People in the territory called him the Ghost Rancher, a man who lived with memories instead of neighbors, with scars instead of stories. He didn't mind the name, it kept folks from asking about the woman he'd once loved, the woman he'd buried far too soon. Since then, he lived with a quiet vow: no more attachments, no more heartbreak. That vow shattered the moment an Apache widow rode into his yard at sunrise, dust rising behind her like smoke from a warning fire. She sat tall on a painted mare, a boy no older than 6 curled weakly in front of her. Her long braids were undone by travel, her eyes red from both wind and worry. As Jacob stepped down from his porch, her voice trembled, but she forced the words out with the strength of a mother who has no one left to ask. "My child needs a father," she said. "And I was told you are a man who does not turn away from the helpless." For a moment Jacob thought he had misheard her. He hadn't spoken to an Apache in years, not since the border skirmishes that had taken lives on both sides. Yet something in the woman's eyes, exhaustion, fear, but also honor, made him pause. "I think you've come to the wrong ranch, ma'am," Jacob replied. "I'm no one's father. And I don't take to company." The boy coughed, a hollow, painful sound that made the mare shift nervously. The widow placed a steadying hand on him. "He is sick. My village was attacked. My husband was killed. The healers say he needs safety, shelter, a man's protection." Her voice cracked. "We were told your ranch is far from conflict. I don't ask marriage. I don't ask anything but a chance for him to live." Jacob looked at the boy, thin, feverish, barely clinging to consciousness, and something inside him broke open, something he thought had died with his wife. He saw in the boy's face the same desperation he once felt when he couldn't save the woman he loved. "Bring him inside," Jacob whispered. The widow's shoulders dropped in relief. Inside the dim cabin, Jacob laid the child on the spare bed, fetched water from the barrel, and lit a lamp. The boy's skin burned with fever, sweat beading on his small forehead. The widow sat beside him, humming an Apache lullaby, her thumb brushing his cheek in slow circles. Jacob watched them, mother and son, weary and displaced, and felt the weight of years of silence press against his chest. "What's his name?" he asked. "Nanton," she said softly. "It means, speaker, though he has been too weak to speak for days." Jacob nodded. "I'll ride for medicine. You stay with him." He saddled his horse and rode hard toward the nearest town, dust blurring behind him like a desperate trail of hope. The frontier physician hesitated at the idea of sending medicine back with an Apache child, but Jacob's glare cut the argument short. When Jacob returned to the ranch at dusk, he found the widow still at the boy's side, singing the same lullaby. "Give him this," Jacob said, handing her the small tin of medicine. She looked at him with a mix of gratitude and lingering sorrow. "I am Tala." "Jacob," he replied. Days passed. The fever broke. Nanton began speaking again, first in whispers, then with shy giggles that echoed through the once silent house. He followed Jacob around the yard, copying the rancher's movements, pretending to fix gates and feed cattle. The sight of the boy trailing him made Tala smile, though she always kept a respectful distance, unsure if they truly belonged. But the ranch was healing too. Where silence once dominated, now came life. The crackle of fire as Tala cooked stew, the soft singing as she wove, the laughter of a child discovering the world. Jacob found himself lingering in the doorway more often, watching them, feeling something he'd forgotten, something dangerous, like hope. One evening Jacob found Tala behind the barn, staring at the sunset staining the sky orange and red. She clutched a small leather pouch, her late husband's medicine bag. Tears shone in her eyes. "I feel guilty," she murmured, "for asking you to protect my son. For living when my husband did not." Jacob shook his head softly. "There's no guilt in surviving. And no shame in protecting your boy." Tala's voice wavered. "I thought loneliness was safer than love. But watching you with Nanton, I see now that fear keeps the heart dead." Her words struck Jacob deep, because they mirrored the thoughts he had buried for so long. Before he could reply, distant thunder rumbled, not from the sky, but from the earth. Riders. Dozens of them. Apache warriors. Jacob tensed, stepping in front of Tala and Nanton. The riders approached with weapons drawn, circling the ranch. Their leader, a broad-shouldered man with a scar down his cheek, glared at Jacob with eyes like sharpened obsidian. "You have taken an Apache widow," the leader growled. "And her child." Tala stepped forward before Jacob could speak. "No, he saved us. Nanton would be dead without him." The warriors murmured, uneasy. The leader's gaze shifted to Nanton, who clung to Jacob's leg, his small hands gripping the rancher's jeans. Something softened in the leader's posture. "Then we owe this man a debt," he declared. "A life debt. For the child." Jacob breathed again. That night, the warriors camped on his land, offering food, help, and stories. Firelight flickered on their faces as they shared tales of loss and survival. Jacob listened, seeing for the first time not enemies, but people carrying the same wounds he had. When dawn rose, the warriors prepared to leave. The leader approached Jacob. "Take care of them," he said, nodding toward Tala and Nanton. "You are part of their story now." After the warriors rode off, Jacob turned to Tala. She stood quietly, her hands clasped, uncertainty thick in her gaze. "I told you I wasn't a father," Jacob said softly. "Wasn't a husband. Wasn't meant to have people depending on me." Tala lowered her eyes. "We will leave if that is your wish." Jacob stepped closer, lifting her chin gently. "But I was wrong," he whispered. "I want you here. Both of you. If you'll stay." Her breath hitched, and tears welled in her eyes, not from grief, but from a breaking of the fear that had kept her heart guarded. Nanton ran toward them, throwing his arms around both adults. Jacob held them close, the three forming a small circle of warmth against the cold morning breeze. For the first time in nearly a decade, Jacob Thorne felt his heart beating not with pain, but with purpose. The ranch was no longer a place of ghosts, it was a home, filled with life, laughter, and the beginnings of a new family. And as the sun rose over the wide western horizon, it carried the message the land had been whispering all along. Sometimes the greatest healing comes not from choosing solitude, but from choosing to love again.